Hey there, everyone. This is the Hipster Snek. And, the holiday season is already way more hectic than expected, so I'm going to nimbly dodge that entire issue by announcing that this is going to be a special episode. Rather than merely a reflection of my incompetence, a single game review, I'm going to rip off far more popular YouTubers and do a top 10 countdown. I also want this to be the opportunity to change up the pace and tone, so I've decided that for this inaugural episode, we're going to start off on the flip side of things. So welcome, everyone, to our very first top 10 countdown list. There's only 3 rules. 1, only 1 game per franchise max, because otherwise this will become a Final Fantasy top 10. 2, the game has to be at least decently well known. And 3, I'm not going to waste time talking about genres I don't ordinarily play. So things like Madden football installments are out entirely. Today's topic, the top 10 games everyone loves, and I don't. Starting off our list with number 10, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Whoa there, everyone. Put the pitchforks, torches, and Snek effigies down for just a moment and let me explain. I actually like Ocarina of Time just fine, which is why it's so low on this list. It's a competent 3D remake of Link to the Past. What? You didn't realize that? Let me explain. You start the game, you get your basic gear, then you get a green, a blue, and a red thing in order to get the Master Sword. Then the stakes are raised and you rescue 7 or 8 important things, each culminating in sagacious advice ultimately pointing you towards the defeat of Ganon. Really, the only difference in these games is that in Ocarina, everyone talks entirely too much and there's a lot more busy work between areas because I suddenly have to do things like Z-target individual bats. And I also get half my stuff taken away when I suddenly get a time travel plotline and... There are so many ways that Ocarina could have improved on the series as a whole, and instead, this sudden and frankly baffling love of this game left Zelda in a predictable rut pretty much until the launch of Breath of the Wild. So instead, people continued talking more, saying less. Instead of using my skill and intuition to find goodies in and out of dungeons, everything is set upon a perfectly linear path for me to find as I go, because each dungeon can't be beaten without that one particular item that they just give you halfway in. Sure, there are more set pieces that look impressive, but there's so much less necessity in player feedback. The swordplay looks more robust, but except for a few mini-bosses, it really just slows things down. And I'm not even one of those guys who's complaining about the water temple. Everything in there dies if you so much as point the hookshot at it anyway, so who cares? But seriously, the fact that the game at its core is just okay, and yet has been held up on the pedestal as the best game of all time, I just don't get it. Number 9, Suikoden 2. Man, this list is not going to win me any friends. I actually enjoyed my playthrough of Suikoden the first, and I think I'm saying that name right? Well, whatever. The problem is Suikoden 2 lacks a lot of things the first game had going for it. For example, how about a plausible reason for the protagonist to be the main character? The default character of 2 is literally a young teen of no meaningful rank, but they just make him the leader because, well, the plot demands that he become the leader. Or how about a main villain who makes any sense? Prince Luca shows up on the top 10 most evil baddies of all time lists all the time, but the game feeds the player conflicting information about him at any given time, and then you kill him off when you're just 75% of the way into the plot to crowbar more political intrigue in. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Hideo Kojima paces plotlines better than this game does. There's entirely too much faffing about and doing meaningless things just because we have to have the 108 stars. But even in spite of things like not having 6 blacksmiths from the first game, this game ends up with a cast that's less memorable. And then, from about mid-game on, every single boss fight has the exact same AI routine, wherein they'll either hit a column or a row in your party, and later on, adds party-wide attacks to that, and begins taking 2 attacks a turn on top of that. Yeah, that's not lazy design at all now, is it? Funny enough, I started off with high hopes for this franchise, and I actually ordered a copy of Suikoden 3 from Amazon around the time I was finishing the first. It still waits in mint condition unplayed because I hated Suikoden 2 that much. I'm sorry guys, but that game is not very good. Number 8, Dragon Quest. Just all of Dragon Quest. For context, my first JRPG experience was Final Fantasy VI, or what we thought at the time was 3, and not long after that was Chrono Trigger. Those games are paced so incredibly well that the idea of level grinding literally never came up in my time playing them, and since I'm the type who rarely if ever runs from enemy encounters, it felt like the game had a more natural progression. And then a friend of mine comes over to hang out one afternoon with this new RPG on his Game Boy called Dragon Warrior. It might have been Dragon Warrior 3, I forget, I was in middle school at the time to be fair. And then I learned firsthand just how improperly paced a JRPG can be. Whether it's true or not, the fact that it takes forever and a day in the first game just to get the first sword out of the first shop, and this is rumored to be the case to prevent game rentals from infringing on the game's sales, is testament to a shoddy NES-era game design mentality, and that's no compliment. And before anyone calls foul, I eventually put my money where my mouth is, and I played through Dragon Quest IV's DS remake, and yeah, it's still a boring, tedious slog that even the well-designed characters and monsters could not get me through. The game requires entirely too much grinding, and frankly, I have a difficult time discerning any given Dragon Quest title from any other in the same series. Unlike Final Fantasy, which has long since left its fantasy moniker in the dust, Dragon Quest has stayed almost too consistent to its source material. Every installment over-relies on the same-face art style of Akira Toriyama and has for too long, and it all hinges on childhood nostalgia to maintain its sales. True fact, Dragon Quest games go to market on Sundays in Japan to avoid people calling in to work to stay home to play them. But here's the greater problem still. Dragon Quest itself is a blight on RPGs, an element that actively slows down the evolution of a genre and holds back creativity and innovation, and the sooner this franchise bites the bullet, the better. Dragon Quest? More like Drags On Quest. Number 7. Mega Man Legends. Quick, name one game where tank controls are a good idea. Was your answer never? Well, congratulations! You win! And your prize is a clunky game that Capcom churned out of a meat grinder because Sony demanded companies make 3D games if they wanted to make 2D games for the Sony PlayStation. You play as Mega Man Volnut, the slowest and weakest of all the Mega Brothers, and spelunk in dungeons destroying old autonomous security drones to steal reactors, which are just big textureless polygonal models that apparently sell for a lot of money, but not for any reason the game ever gets around to explaining. To do this, you use your pea shooter of a Mega Buster and wait several seconds, because the enemy AI in this game is universally defeated via circle strafing. Add in the fact that Tron Bonne is baby's first tsundere, and you end up with a game that's frustrating to play, has a stupid, predictable anime plotline, and a rabid fanbase that has nostalgia goggles to the max, because even Mega Man Legends 2 made fun of how bad Mega Man Legends 2 was. The fact that they even bothered teasing a Legends 3 was a waste of everyone's time, and I am perfectly fine with never digging this mess up from whatever ruins it's currently buried in. Number 6. Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, Snek, obviously Sonic the Hedgehog on PS3 and Xbox 360 was terrible. Everyone knows that. I hear some bespectacled nerd sneering out of their mouth. Well, sorry gang, but that's not the game I'm actually picking on. I mean Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis. This is definitely going to be an unpopular pick, since the Genesis quadrilogy alongside Sonic CD are generally considered untouchable. I hate to break it to you guys, but the first game of this franchise aged a bit more like milk than wine. The game lacks the branching paths introduced in Sonic 2, or dynamic gameplay styles offered in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The levels are specifically designed to keep the blue blur moving as slowly as possible, and the bosses are sad. Thrill as Dr. Eggman / Robotnik slowly pokes the ground with a single tiny needle. Chill as he sits in a hovercraft with a wall of bubbles around him, which Sonic can just breathe in. Spill as the game climaxes with an engine piston room with incredibly slow-moving objects attempting to smash you. The levels are boring, the boss fights are incompetent, and the overall design feels sloppy. Seriously, after games like Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic Mania, play the first game again with some fresh, non-nostalgic eyes, and maybe you'll see what I'm talking about. Number 5. Papers, Please. I really, really hate to dig on the indie scene. I really do. But this game has been the recipient of some truly unreal praise, and I just don't get it. If you're not familiar, you play as the border guard for glorious not Matha Russia-controlled not Iraqistan. There, you check people's paperwork and listen to their sob stories. The problems with this are legion. To start, the game went with pixel graphic design, and it doesn't work here. Normally, I'd be all down for pixel art, but the people don't look like people. And my actual day job involves double checking other people's paperwork and listening to their sob stories already, so my patience for this kind of exercise is, shall we say, limited. Also, it turns out there's no penalty for just turning people away for any reason, except for a few who have special seals on their documents and they show up later on. So the whole thing kind of elicited in me a deep sense of schadenfreude to slap deny down rapid-fire style so that the glorious not motherland would inflate my check. And frankly, based on the reviews and commentaries I've seen from other people, I get the sense that was, not the game dev's actual point. Whoops. Number 4, Resident Evil 7. Speaking of unreal praise, I cannot count the number of times I read the words, Resi 7 is a return to form for the Resident Evil franchise. And to this day, I have literally no idea what these people are on about. When was Resi a boring, tedious, never-ending litany of slogs? The game starts off promising enough. The tension starts decently high as you move into this Louisiana swamp, and immediately blows it by forcing the main character to crawl through a tight gateway made up of random bits of animal meat, and the guy just says nothing. But 15 minutes later, a nearby ringing telephone causes him to leap out of his skin and shout expletives. So, my immersion good and destroyed, I then get captured by Leatherface's less interesting cousins and, quote-unquote, chased around a relatively small area by an AI too stupid to overcome my I am ducking next to an end table strategy, and then I proceed to dance around them. Then I did a small, rock-stupid puzzle, had a protracted cutscene, then had the crazy redneck man run me down in a car and kill me, whereupon I had to do this entire sentence over again, puzzle, protracted cutscene, boss fight, again. Even after killing him, he just gets up and resumed chasing me. And the worst part of it all was it was completely devoid of tension. These guys just never stopped talking, so I was just rolling my eyes and grunting in response to what was supposed to make me ill at ease. Nemesis, these guys are not. They were unable to compete with my saunter casually for the next doorway strategy, and eventually, my currently undefeated turned the game off and play something better gambit. Number 3, Stardew Valley. In the first draft of this script, this entire paragraph was just the words, literally play Rune Factory over and over again, but then I felt that a little more detail was in order. Alright, so, take the SNES Harvest Moon title. Add some magic gnomes and a not exactly subtle Walmart stand-in for the obligatory corporate evil bad guy. Now, make it grindier than that and add tons of unnecessary busywork on an overly long magic checklist. Congrats on your Game of the Year award, I guess? Never mind that Harvest Moon continues to this day under the title Story of Seasons. This is due to legalese with Natsume, that's a rant for another day. And Rune Factory has done all this infinitely more and done it infinitely better 6 times over now with another on the way. In all seriousness, I tried to enjoy this, but the days are too short, the protagonist too slow, and the NPCs too boring. So I wasn't even tempted at the prospect of the romance angle, so pass. Number 2, Undertale. Again, I hate bagging on the indie scene. I do, but I ask you to approach this with an open mind. First, the few social media accounts that I actually use got absolutely flooded with determination lol memes, and I get oversaturated on the fandom before I even know what the source of them is. After a while, someone tells me I should try it before I knock it. And that is absolutely fair, and I was in the wrong for copying the attitude of abstaining without even giving it a chance. So I did get the game, and I played it. And, well, it's a 5-hour-long game with 3 hours of filler. Never in my life have I seen an RPG with self-loathing this severe. The dominant strategy to 99% of the game is running away from everything because everything else results in my icon being trapped in a 3x3 box and bullet held into oblivion. And at least in an actual bullet hell game, I'd have the benefit of freedom of movement over the full screen. This just felt really sadistic and inconsistent. For example, the first two major story bosses cannot/will not actually kill you, but the mid-boss between them will. Not to mention, the game is fully devoted to the idea of if you attack for any reason, including that of self-defense, you're the bad guy, resulting in the most absolute black-white morality system I've ever seen in a video game. Shadow the Hedgehog gives more meaning to my choices because every variation of the neutral ending isn't an ending. It's just the plot getting bored of itself and stopping prematurely. And don't even get me started on the genocide ending, which is the same but dumber. I seriously just don't get the appeal of this game, with its excessive fluff, extraneous cast, obsessive reliance on emotional leverage in lieu of meaningful characterization, and a plotline that's ultimately self-defeating. Oh yeah, spoiler alert, the final boss is a basement full of dead kids, but I'm the jerk here because I'm a human. Get out of here. Number 1. Kingdom Hearts. In the interest of fairness, I've actually only played 2 games out of this franchise. The very first on PS2 and Chain of Memories on the Game Boy Advance. But here's the problem. These games are all awful. Disney and Final Fantasy don't mesh, and we only get the most generic aspects of either. From Disney, we get the same 5 or 6 Disney quote-unquote princess films, ignoring things like The Dark Cauldron or The Sword in the Stone, and from Final Fantasy, we ignore everything that Nomura isn't responsible for, so, the parts of Final Fantasy that are actually good. The plot is overwritten, jumbled mess, confusing only because it's portrayed and executed poorly, rather than it being in any way meaningfully complex. I know I used this joke before, but this bears repeating. Hideo Kojima can write and pace a story better than the absolute abysmal storytelling present in even the simplest of the Kingdom Hearts titles. And the only market appeal that I can imagine is this game will sell to people who frequent Hot Topic, but that's such a transient demographic, I'm legitimately surprised that this Duke Nukem Forever of RPGs that was Kingdom Hearts 3 even made it to shelves in the first place. And given that it received vastly dwarfed audience reaction compared to previous entries, and just like everything Nomura touches, it was over budget, late, and underwhelming, maybe Squeenix should wake up and smell the ashes of Final Fantasy's actual finality. Whew, and that's my top 10 list of games everyone seems to love, except for me. I hope you were entertained by my distaste and maybe learned a thing or two about my particular gaming preferences in the meantime. If you love one or more yet, all of the above, that's fine. This is just my silly opinion. Tell me what games that are wildly popular that maybe you don't like. Or maybe just tell me now that my channel's jumped the shark now that I picked on a franchise you like. That's cool too. I still love you even if you don't love me anymore. Jokes aside, this has been the Hipster Snek. If you want more content like this, be sure to hit the like button and tell me so in the comments. If you want more general gaming content every week, be sure to hit that subscribe and bell icon too. Thanks for letting me share a bit about myself that usual review formats wouldn't allow. I'll see you next time for more obscure games and indie excellence. And I'll see you there.